Welcome everybody into another edition of Warm Weather Fans. My name is Brian Stone, joined this week again by Zeke Palermo as we go over all of the Week 12 action in the Sun Belt. Zeke, we basically had, I want to say, like one good game this week that was relatively close. A lot of blowouts. Unfortunately, couple quarterback injuries that we don't really know what the future holds on those. We'll get into all those as we kind of run down the games. But what do you think your biggest takeaway from this week was?
I think I don't know if it's necessarily a takeaway, but the biggest angle is that we still have a race in the West. It's actually a three-dog race led by Southern Miss and Troy, but Arkansas State still has hope here. And the final 2 weeks are going to be interesting. I think what I anticipate ultimately happening is being the Southern Miss Troy season finale, being our conference semifinal, so to speak. But this race could have ended a lot sooner, especially the way that Southern Miss has kind of handled every other team. But as you mentioned, the quarterback injuries are really going to change how the Golden Eagles kind of have an outlook over the next couple of weeks. And same thing with Troy. We finally got to see Goose Crowder again after, a full season practically of Tucker Gilchrist. So that changes a lot for them in that regard. It'll be an interesting run in that. I don't know. I think I've definitely been wishy-washy on. There's some weeks where I've thought that Troy Southern Miss game was going to be a semifinal, but there's some weeks where it's looked like Southern Miss is in a class of its own, at least within the West. And this is all, of course, futile because whoever has to go play James Madison is just going to get stomped on.
Yeah. So that actually is a good kind of transition. I'm gonna go ahead and give you kind of my take. I think if Braxton is not, and this is talking about Troy because obviously they got beat 33-0 on Thursday night in a game that they were not really that competitive in. I mean, this game was not close for the most part. I mean, Old Dominion jumped on them with 20 points in the first half, and Troy couldn't do anything. And this, again, we're kind of back to I still don't know if Jared Parker's the guy in Troy to be their kind of head coach that takes them to the next level. I've felt this way the whole time. We went back and talked over their winning streak and the teams that they played in that and how bad all of those teams are and how they basically just got to feast on what was the lower division of the Sun Belt, or in the standings.
Lower half, yeah.
Yeah, and you get to see on Thursday, what does it look like when they play an actual football team that is good at football and has a quarterback and can score some points, and it's not good. And I think we're back. I've never left this corner. I kind of conceded a little bit, but I'm still on the thing of if Braxton's healthy, Southern Miss is dog walking this Troy team. And if Braxton's not healthy and it's Liddy, I don't even really want to watch the Troy Southern Miss game with Goose Crowder dueling it out with Landry Liddy to see who gets the honor of losing by 60 points in the Sun Belt title game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough position. Troy was, as you said, absolutely outclassed. Offensively, got nothing done. Goose Crowder finished 11 for 21. You get a little bit of Tucker Gilchrist 2 for 2 in this game. But from an offensive standpoint, 9 sacks. We made jokes a couple weeks ago. Was it Arkansas State that just dropped 7 sacks out of 9 sacks is obscene and entirely that's malpractice. That is really someone's going to get hurt in that regard. And then offensively, obviously, Old Dominion has been playing this kind of magic act where some weeks it looks like they are one of the most interesting and most fun offenses in the league or in the nation. And then some weeks they kind of disappear on us. This just exposes the real flaws in Troy that they've they've got the weapons, or they have the skill. I think the quarterback, Tucker Kilcrease, had some really interesting weeks, and I think is an interesting idea at quarterback. There are some offensive weapons that, like Tay Meadows, Rara Thomas, Jordan Lovett has been good. There are some interesting pieces, but much like Louisiana, it does not matter. It doesn't matter what skill you have if those guys up front can't do their job. This was an embarrassment, and it's awesome that we're putting our best and brightest on Thursday nights.
Well, okay, so I disagree with you a little bit as far as Kilcrease goes, because I think, again, when you now look back at the winning streak, you go,
Right.
okay, he really lit up some like bad teams during that. It was, Texas State, he played really well in, but then there have been games recently where they won a couple weeks ago, but he didn't play very well. Last week they lost and he didn't play well against Arkansas State, I believe. And this week it's like, it does not matter. If they do not have a quarterback that can elevate them to the level of the top teams when they're all healthy, like in the East-West division, doesn't really matter. When you remember, what was it, Gunnar Watson, a couple years back. I don't think that he was ever in contention for the best quarterback in the Sun Belt, but the team around him was just so well built and coached that it didn't ultimately matter a lot of times, and they won 2 Sun Belt titles. So who can really argue? This team is not built like that. The 2025 Troy team is not insulating the quarterback the way that the previous teams did with Gunnar Watson, where it was like, you never really had to see Gunnar Watson play from behind that much, because defensively they were giving up 16 points a game usually. And so it's like, okay, if they score once, they're right back in it. When they had, Summerall and all those guys. Now you get down 10 points, all of a sudden everybody just starts looking around being like, is Kilcrease going to make a play? Is Goose Crowder coming back in? Are we going to be able to run the ball? Are any of our receivers going to step up in a big spot? You mentioned Rara Thomas. I don't put this loss solely on him or anything, but 2 catches for 20 yards. Your leading receiver was Roman Mothershed with 37 yards receiving. Goose Crowder was bad. Kilcrease finished 2 of 2 for 14 yards. I guess I have more to say on the Old Dominion side of this than I do Troy, but this is who I thought Troy was the whole time, where it was like, those wins are nice, but if you had to re-roll with another team's schedule, like let's say you had to play Old Dominion schedule or something like that, I think this team would be much closer to like a 4-win team ultimately. Like they've been able to dodge a lot of the real contenders like in the Sun Belt.
They have, but I think, like, to push back on the Kilcrease idea, what we saw in really bad game against, again, pretty poor defenses, South Alabama, Texas State was kind of in that run as well. You had ULM as well. So again, as you said, not the creme de la creme of our conference, but what we saw in those games was something that guys like Bishop Davenport, I think, is kind of a good comparison, where has a similar schedule, has a similar interesting, but there's no that guy around him offensively, and it's all because of the offensive line that I think we don't get to see that Tucker Kilcrease flashes. This team is allowed, I just looked at 43 sacks all year. The next nearest in the conference, we're looking at 25. You're nearly double the next closest team in sacks allowed. And obviously part of that does fall to the quarterback, right? This is partly Tucker Kilcrease. It's not like they're just letting guys through. Please come on, sack our quarterback. There's a level of holding on to the ball to some degree. Yeah. But you're working from so far behind. You're so while everyone else is on second or third, you're still walking up to the plate here in that sense. And so I'm interested to see what Tucker Kilcrease does. I don't know if he has a job next year here or elsewhere, but that's where I really get this idea that he's shown flashes that other guys, Bishop Davenport being one, that we really haven't seen.
I mean, I wouldn't accuse Bishop Davenport of being a great quarterback either. I think is a little bit where not trying to take the wind out of your sails, but that's where I
Right.
stand on that. I think he's best comparable because we did the PFF breakdown
Mhm.
of Louisiana weeks back. I think you can compare him and Lunch Winfield's situations pretty comparatively. Like you've got a pretty forgettable receiving core. You don't have much of a run game a lot of times, or if you do, it looks good like in game, but then you look back at it and it's like, oh, Tay Meadows had 68 yards on 15 carries and a score. Like he's not lighting up the box score. And then I've seen more out of Lunch this year behind, again, a bad offensive line, not great weapons, not a great running game because of the offensive line. I've seen more flashes out of him than I have out of Crowder, Kilcrease, whoever they want to throw out there. So I think that I think if you took Lunch and you put him on a better built team, you would be closer to like a 6-win team, like this kind of Troy team is. But Kilcrease, again, he can't elevate. Crowder, whoever they want to throw out there, they do not elevate what the team has. Whereas I feel like the ultimate win results don't show it, but Lunch has played better with the same kind of situation. Individually, he's played better. The team is not better, but he has played better with kind of the same situation around him. And for that is kind of why I'm like, I can kind of see the diamond in the rough argument with Lunch, where I can't really see that argument unless, again, Troy would have to play Texas State 12 times for me to be like, okay, all right, like I see what you got here. Like you don't get to play the worst defense every single week. So
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
that's legitimate. You said you had something on Old Dominion out of this game.
Yeah, they finally, everybody else stepped up around Colton Joseph and didn't make him run the entire show. You had Devin Roche, 145 yards rushing. Traquan Jones, 96 yards on 9 carries, including a 65-yard rush. You had Colton Joseph did arguably better with his legs than he did with his arm. He only completed half of his passes for 147 yards and a score. But again, when you run for as a team, and again, this is including sack yardage and all that kind of stuff. As a team, when you run for 7.5 yards a carry, you don't really have to throw the football, which has been what a lot of other teams that have really, really bad run defenses, the Georgia schools namely, have dealt with this year. Is like, we can't even force the other team to throw the ball, so we're not even able to take advantage of like any potential mistakes, because it's just truly like they're just running the ball right up the middle and we have no answers for it. So this has been one of the first couple times this year that Old Dominion has said, you know what, Colton, you've done a lot for us this year. Use your legs, cash in a couple of touchdowns. We don't need you to put on the cape and be Superman. And for that, I'm like, good, because again, your quarterback can get hurt in the vein of a Samari Collier or a Braylon Braxton. And it's like, if that happens, I mean, you're probably not winning another game, maybe. Like, I don't know if Hinnackel is a good passer because they don't give him the opportunities, but he had one good game kind of at the end of last year when Colton Joseph was hurt, but he still didn't throw the ball that much. He had more like rushing yards than he had passing yards. So credit to Old Dominion. They the rest of the team stepped up around him. And then you mentioned the 9 sacks on defense. Like you can't beat that.
No, obviously not. I think I don't. It's curious to me, and we'll find out, I guess, over the next 2 weeks if this is the new norm, if this is what we've been waiting for out of the rest of the Old Dominion offense, because the storyline has been all year, who's going to step up. This is their first time with a 100-yard rusher. We're talking since mid-September. This is their only third time all year with a 100-yard rusher that wasn't Colton Joseph. And so this is what we saw earlier in the year, and when it was still kind of a 2-dog race between them and James Madison. Then obviously James Madison just came out and flattened them, and it wasn't particularly close. But this brings me back to like the Marshall game, where Marshall was able to put a stop on Colton Joseph, and the rest of the team just kind of deteriorated around him, and they ended up ultimately losing that game. You end this season with one conference loss if these guys, Devin Roche, Traquan Brown, is it Trey Jones
Trey
the
Brown.
third? Yeah, Trey Brown, the receiver. He's been good, as has Naheem Abdul Gladding all year. But if these guys had shown up in that Marshall game, we're looking at a one conference loss team that is like flirting with received votes, because their only losses are to James Madison and number 1, number 2 Indiana.
Well, if the rest of the team steps up, then maybe you don't get blanked in the second half of the JMU game too.
It's certainly possible.
They got outscored like 35-0 in the second half. Like they didn't score a single point. We talked about it when Jack Fitzpatrick came on. Old Dominion had like 10 yards of offense or something after halftime in that game. Like, so when everybody jumps on us, let's say everything remains the same. It's Colton Joseph's back next season. He doesn't transfer out. They bring comparable weapons. When everybody jumps down our throat next year and we do the preview and we say, this is a good team, but are they going to be able to compete with like the true contenders in the Sun Belt? I just want to go back and point in the JMU game and go, I know JMU was really, really good last year. However, that second half is the difference between being a real contender and being like, there's a term like people use in like UFC of like gatekeeper. Like if someone wants to be a contender, they have to beat you, but you're not really like going to compete for like a title. So there are, levels to like, you can't honestly step up and like challenge someone for the title. Like you're going to be kind of at your level, like water finds its level, but that someone has to beat you. And JMU did that. Marshall did that, but now we kind of understand what Marshall is a little bit, but it's one of those things. It's like, they need more people to step up. And we've kind of been beating that drum since before the preseason. And it's nice that they did it in this game, but those are the reasons they haven't been able to win those two games that really kind of careened their season off a cliff. As far as the conference race, like they'll make a bowl game, they'll get to do all that nice stuff, but yeah, they're not. That's the reason they're not with the JMUs of the world, is because they can't get everybody to kind of come together and produce all at the same time in games that like really, really matter. But yeah, great job in this one. You mentioned Trey Brown, 5 catches, 112. Despite only completing half of his passes, Colton Joseph finished with the 3rd highest PFF passing grade this week. His yards per attempt was 7.4 and his ADOT was 12.9. So he was pushing it down the field. And again, you could do that when you know, hey, this other team can't do anything. They can't score. So
yeah.
So yeah, that was a good win on Thursday for Old Dominion. All right, so starting with the Saturday games, this was yours. Marshall defeats Georgia State 30-18. TJ Finley, give me what were your thoughts on TJ Finley on Saturday?
Anyone other than Cameron Brown was going to be a no contest. I think Georgia State was always going to lose this game. But anyone other than Cameron Brown, it was like, it was never going to be a fight. So TJ Finley did what we expected through, I think 2 interceptions, had a fumble, was not great through the air, did nothing on the ground. The highlights from a Georgia State perspective, and it's funny that at the end of the year, when we reflect on the 12-game season, these will probably be the 2 highlights of the season, is you set a school record with a 92-yard rush from Jordan Simmons, 92-yard rushing touchdown, and then you hit a 60-yarder right at the buzzer, Braden McAllister, who is not usually the kicker. It's Liam Rickman. I don't know if he's just got the leg or what, but sets a program record with a 60-yard field goal. Those were electric moments that will ultimately be forgotten in a 1-11 season.
Yeah.
Dale McGee finishes his first 2 seasons more than likely without a home Sun Belt win, with likely the only Sun Belt win through his first 2 years coming at Texas State last year. They finished Panthers finish off with Troy and Old Dominion. No matter we spoke at nauseum about some of the deficiencies Troy has, defensive line being the primary one, and then just kind of some weird bodies at really a lot of the offensive skill positions. That's enough to score 35 here.
Right.
From a Marshall perspective, though, I think this was, congratulations to beat Georgia State, but hey, Carlos Del Rio Wilson doing what he's done. He's turned into a really, really great quarterback for them. Toby Payne shows up in this one, 5 catches for 110. He's been important for them for a couple years now. And over the past couple weeks, it kind of taken a downturn to like a 30, 40-yard receiving guy. So it's good to see him jump back up. Not a ton of like long-term observations out of this one. I think both teams did what was expected, that being Georgia State show up and host the event, and Marshall win the game.
You talked about the long rush from Jordan Simmons. He was the 4th highest graded running back per PFF this week. 19 carries, 164 yards and a score. Mm-hmm. Was it all just that one rush that kind of powered it, or was he just kind of ripping off chunk gains like at will?
I mean, he was good. He was good in this game. This was, I think, his first 100-yard game of the season. I know for certain his first 100-yard game of the season. Not really. This was just a volume yardage, and it's propped up by the 92. It's not like he was running all over Marshall here. It is a little bit of a where has this guy been, because over the past 3 weeks, he's been putting up pretty good numbers. I think he had 77 last week and maybe 50 and change the week before, maybe even more. So it does feel in this offense where we've lacked identity, and obviously that was very turbulent quarterback situation through the early weeks where we tried Christian Valaire again, and then it became TJ Finley, and then it was Cameron Brown and TJ Finley at the same time, and then it finally became Cameron Brown, and now we're back to TJ Finley because we don't know how long Cameron Brown's going to be out. So, with that turbulence, and then obviously, you have Ted Hurst, but who else in that receiving game is a real option? So it feels like, where's this guy been, Jordan Simmons? But, and it's obviously frustrating. I think he's a 5th or maybe even 6th-year senior, so it's not like we get to roll that into next season. But I don't know. As we play Troy, as we play South Al, something to keep it a little interesting.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Toby Payne. He had a great game. DeAndre Tamarez, 4 catches for 79 yards. Yeah, man, Marshall just handled him. DeMarcus Lacey caught a touchdown. Adrian Norton caught a touchdown. Like, just handled Georgia State. Although, I honestly thought when the game kind of started, I was like, wow, this is closer than I originally had anticipated. And then Marshall just kind of leaned on him and felt like they just pulled away, especially in the second quarter.
It was 7-7 through most of the first half. Marshall didn't score to go up 14-7 until pretty late in the second. But then they were able to double dip because Georgia State punted really quickly. So they double dip, and then you end the half with the 60-yard field goal. So it was 21-10 going into halftime. And you think, again, that was closer than I would have anticipated at halftime. But Marshall just kind of runs away with it. Georgia State scores a touchdown in the third quarter, and again, has a chance after making a stop to kind of double dip and keep it a game. But then TJ Finley takes a 3rd down sack, and you're like, all right, well, that's why we took Cameron Brown instead of you. And here we are.
All right. Well, good for Marshall picking up that win. They're, they play. Did they play JMU in the finale? Or have they? No, they already played JMU. My bad. I was trying to remember who their last 2 games are against, because they might be 6-6. They might be 7-5.
Right. They play
anybody hard.
And Georgia Southern.
That's right.
So
Well, they'll
those are
probably
two
win both
winnable
of those
games. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll probably win both of those games. All right. This next one here, there's a lot to go over in James Madison App State. And
Not a lot of it good.
not of it. Well, it depends on if you're a James Madison fan or not. This is one of those box scores that, like, if you're the JMU defensive coordinator, I'd print this thing out and like hang it on my wall. Okay, so to put it in perspective, James Madison obviously routed him. It was 58-10. AJ Swan played most of the game. He went 8 of 28 for 64 yards and a pick. I texted friend of the show, Aikman Chambers. He let me know JJ Cole was not hurt. It was just a coach's decision to play AJ Swan the last couple weeks. And you see how this went. James Madison outrushed App as a team 324-1. App State had 1 rushing yard on 15 carries net. You know, they count sack yardage or whatever. So it's like Debinion had 25 yards on 10 carries and Swan lost 24 yards on sacks. So they had net 1 rushing yard. James Madison had a guy in Joby Mallory score 3 touchdowns on 8 carries and go over 100 yards. Wayne Knight had 94 yards on the ground and a score. Sluka came in late and played and scored a touchdown and had 70 yards rushing on 4 carries. They just, I mean, this is a total destruction of App. I will say, after I saw the photo that we retweeted from the App State account with Dowell Loggins on the sideline talking to, I guess, what was the GM of the team and what seemed like his like 10-year-old son, and he's showing them the iPad and like, or whatever. Like, I don't know what the heck that was. I will say, App fans, I still think it's too early in year 1 to fire Dowell Loggins, but I will tell you this, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to ultimately happen. They're going to bring him back for year 2 because, unfortunately, that year 1 buyout probably is just through the roof, and they're like, we just don't want to pay it, which I totally get. But App fans, I understand now. Like, I get it.
It's bad, man. It is bad.
It's really bad.
The AJ Swan, JJ Cole thing is what really perplexed me, because if they could have, AJ Swan would have played the whole thing and only got hurt late in the game with, I think, the right knee was what it was reported. He left the field on crutches. And so, you know, we're not rooting for injury, but luckily for App fans, it looks like it might be JJ Cole the rest of the way. That really perplexes me. Again, this always is going to come back to, why is there no offensive coordinator? Why are we letting the head coach? Like, this is always going to be the comeback from that perspective. And then defensively, this is not something James Madison has really done. They've not really throttled teams like this. They did it against Old Dominion, and that was to some degree necessary in order to kind of solidify their spot atop the East and really atop the conference. I guess they did it to Texas State
until the second half. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's the craziest thing is, like, you're right. They haven't done this where they've just taken a team, given a team the belt for 4 straight quarters and then been like sent them home packing. The craziest stat to me is that App State defensively had more sacks than James Madison did in this game. That's the craziest stat that I could think of in a 58-10 loss.
This, I think for James Madison, and they're obviously helped by the South Florida loss. This is kind of the notch that they needed to turn into at this point in the season over the last couple games, as they finish out against Washington State and Coastal, in order to really clinch that playoff spot. Because now, after South Florida's loss, it looks like James Madison has to be the shoe-in for the Peace or G6 representative in the college football playoffs, right? And so
have we dropped the whole Memphis thing? Is the Memphis thing dead now?
I don't know. Again, you can only go because it's the committee, right? And you really have no idea what's going on in there. None of it good. I don't
I
know.
have no idea what their thought process is ever. So I don't presume to know what they're gonna do.
Right. Granted, like again, who knows how much this means? But I remember watching like the pregame stuff, like game day and whatever, all the pre-kickoff stuff in the morning, and it was all here's our FPI projected playoffs, and it's like South Florida is the leader, and then James Madison, and then as you said, yeah, Memphis was kind of in there, but I don't know how serious that was. I don't know. We'll find out. We record this on Sunday nights. The rankings come out Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you'll know by the time you hear this what the committee was actually thinking. But that's it. Memphis has dropped 2 straight to Tulane in East Carolina, so that puts them pretty squarely out at 8-3. Pretty squarely out of that race. So,
and because I know that the playoff committee does not actually care about looking at like quality wins and quality losses and things like that, they kind of just look at. I truly don't know what they look at. Like a lot of times, it seems to be very heavily narrative based. But yeah, so we'll see how much all of that matters. It might not be like wins and losses that ultimately they care about, even though James Madison's 9-1, undefeated in their conference, only losses to what was a ranked Louisville team up until this past weekend. Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, though, this was just an absolute beating of a game, 58-10. I think the most damning thing to me, other than the stuff on the sideline, which is totally out of bounds, and like I've not seen some of the most embarrassing Sunbelt coaches do something like that, is the fact that like he's looking at AJ Swan and he's looking at JJ Cole and he's picking AJ Swan every time. Like AJ Swan must just be a practice hero. Like he must just be lighting it up in practice, and then he gets out on game day and like maybe he does the Lamar Jackson thing where he eats like shrimp Alfredo and it messes up his like IBS before each game. But I don't know what does he see throughout the week, and then he comes in on Saturday and what is just like blindsided by like what he's given from AJ Swan. Like I don't understand.
I think the good news for us is that within about this time next year, Dowell Loggins will be available on Sunday nights to explain it to us.
That's fair enough. All right. So moving on from that one, this one should be pretty quick. South Alabama beats ULM 26-14. ULM went up 14-0 early in this game, and I was like, oh man, did we underestimate ULM? And then they didn't score a point the rest of the game. And I was just like, oh, never mind. Like they're exactly who you think they are at every turn. So
yeah. And this is kind of interesting because ULM has had this, I don't know what you want to call it, inability to score when down. And South Alabama has demonstrated a similar trait. Obviously not to the same degree, but has displayed a similar thing. When you go back to their Louisiana game, it would have been 2 weeks ago now. They were down 24-7 at half. And then Louisiana only scores 7 in the second half. You only put up 15. So it's like they kind of had the same thing where not really able to play from behind very well. And part of that is the quarterback deficiencies both teams have. Monroe just crumbles here, man. They had the opportunity to, I think what you call just writing them off, which we've done for a lot of this year, and we've done to South Alabama to a lesser degree. But no, they're who we thought they were. They can't put up points. They play defense, but it's nothing. It's on no side of the extreme.
No,
it's just
South
not.
Alabama is absolutely unremarkable in every respect.
Mm-hmm.
They're good enough to kind of dodge the absolute basement with the Georgia States and the ULMs and these teams that like literally can't get out of their own way. But when you play even a passable like middle of the road Sunbelt team, they just have nothing for them. So it's just like, you know, Major Applewhite, my opinion of him as a coach has not changed despite winning this game. You know, I still think if I was South Al, I think I'd just fire him at the end of the year and just eat the buyout. Like the damage a year 3 could do if you're running back this and you bring this back for 26, I think could like really cripple like any fan support you may have, because it's like, imagine being like, yeah, we were the second worst team in the West, but things will change because we don't want to pay this guy to go away. It's like, wow, what a hell of a sales pitch. So it's not like they've dealt with like major injuries to guys that like would be putting them over the top had they stayed healthy. They're just not, there's not a good team. And like ULM on the flip side of things, I mean, Aiden Armenta, dude, I don't know why he keeps getting out there. At this point, I would just throw Hunter Herring out there and just let him play like a hybrid wildcat that can kind of throw sometimes quarterback. You know, I've called him Taysom Hill in the past. I would rather see that if I was the coach of ULM. I would rather run the spread option from the shotgun and just do something else that differently. Like how can you? Okay, he didn't even crack 190 yards passing on Saturday. Aiden Armenta threw for 82 yards and a pick. He had the second worst PFF grade, only ahead of AJ Swan, who was historically bad, and completed less than 30% of his passes. So I don't know, man. And it's like, okay, Aiden Armenta's yards per attempt 4.3. So he's not even really like trying to push it downfield. And I don't know. Like this is going to be another. But here's the thing, you know, we've talked about this. Brian Vincent's also the AD interim. He's not going to fire himself, so he's going to be back next year. He's got to find a quarterback. Like if they ever hire a real AD who like expects results, like he has to find a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through South Alabama's history and see like what their trend is coaching wise. That 7-6 last year, again, we've called it before and we'll continue. Not a very strong or convincing 7-6 last year. It was kind of very much held up by Gio Lopez, very much held up by like Jamal Pritchett. Blaine Myrick was a guy too who like really held up that team. Both of these teams need to change, and I really do just think you're right. Nothing really to add. South Alabama is unfortunately not in a position right now because he's not going to fire himself. Because does he then if Major Applewhite, let's say he were to step down, does he get to keep his interim AD role?
It's ULM's head coach is the AD.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. I know that for fact. Brian Vincent, rather, if he were to step down, does he get to retain his interim AD role? Because with Terry Bowden, like, I don't know, they were pretty aggressive, I thought, with Terry Bowden. He wasn't turning the team into a winner, but he really pulled them out of the basement. I thought that was a swift boot that they gave him.
I don't know. I thought Brian Vincent was a good hire on the surface because he coached UAB really well that year that Bill Clark stepped down. I think one of two things are true. Either he's not a good recruiter or he does not have the resources to get a competitive team around him at ULM. We've talked about like their financial issues. I'm sure NIL is not good there. He hasn't in the 2 years he's been there, he's just run back the Aiden Armenta thing. Like he didn't really bring anybody in that was like really competing for the job. Like Armenta was kind of the entrenched starter in the preseason. Like we didn't even hear another person's name. Like, hey, watch out for it was just like, yeah, it's Armenta again. And I was kind of like, you know, he wasn't great last year, but that's a pretty uninspiring choice to just be like, no, we're just putting the job right in his lap. And then if he takes it, great. And if he doesn't, we're screwed. I don't like that as an alternative. I feel like that's pretty lazy just to be like, I don't know. I'm not even going to call anybody from the FCS and see if they want to move up and play here. Like,
I think this
know.
program, again, this really hinges on like that financial side. Maybe they're like Idaho and they just fall back down. Maybe that's what's best for them. I mean, I feel I have those rumblings at Georgia State as well. It's like sometimes that might just be the best thing. You don't want to be that guy, but
yeah,
what else are you going to do?
Yeah, especially when you're non-competitive. You know, last year they had their moments, but now with the benefit of hindsight, you're really like, it was Ahmad Hardy was like, you know, basically carrying the team on his back because he allowed the defense to kind of play more aggressively. They were limiting the other team's possessions per game. You have some good running backs on this team like Braylon McReynolds, but you don't have anybody who could turn around and step into the SEC and be like one of the leading rushers in that conference like day two. I think is the big difference. So, you know, as long as he doesn't have a quarterback, like they don't really have a shot. I mean, even you saw last year, even with a generational running back that came through ULM, like it ultimately didn't make a huge bit of difference. They start hot, they fall off the map, they finish, I think, below 500. And so it's just like, yeah, this is going to be, you know, year 2, and he's going to have probably 8 wins, I guess, as a coach through 2 years. Like, and then you talked about how aggressive they were with Bowden, but that was when they had an AD. So I don't know that they still make that move now. All right, next game here, Texas State Southern Miss. So I didn't know, and I guess nobody knew that Braylon Braxton was out, and he was a true like game time decision. People said like he was on the field. I think he tried to give it a go. It didn't ultimately pan out. He came out as like one of the captains like before the game, but he wasn't dressed. And then ironically, like I didn't know he wasn't going to play when we recorded last Sunday, but I was like, I feel like Texas State's only shot is if the backup comes in and plays and is really bad, and then they take advantage of that and just jump on him. And that's exactly what they did. They scored 27 first half points. You know, Landry Liddy had a real struggle of a time trying to kind of keep drives alive and keep the offense on the field. Lincoln Pear had 118 yards rushing on 21 carries and a score. Brad Jackson only threw 17 passes in this game, 14 of 17 for 192 and a score. They just straight dominated, you know, Southern Miss. Southern Miss has shown now like they are very top heavy to the point where this team is now on like the Troy level of like, I don't know what I'm getting out of this team if Braylon Braxton's not the quarterback.
Yeah. From an offensive perspective, Texas State kind of stuck to their normal game plan initially. This was not, this is the first time Brad Jackson's thrown less than 20 passes all year. And so it was the very normal high flying offense early in the game. But I mean, just very quickly, it was pretty apparent that Southern Miss was going to be non-competitive. Texas State scores, I think, on both of their first 2 drives. They go field goal touchdown, while Southern Miss in the first quarter fumbles the ball and then punts on 6 plays. So Texas State scores on every first half possession except for the final, where I think just ran out the first half. This is, I remember when, was it Troy? I compared, it was Troy last year or 2 years ago when Summerall left for Gerard Parker and this Southern Miss team. In that, look, you have a lot of the bones of a championship winning team. Obviously, Southern Miss brought over those bones from Marshall, namely Braylon Braxton, namely Charles Huff. But beyond those, like very top level, good infrastructure, is how I compared them. In retrospect, they're actually kind of opposites in that Troy had what you would call the real bones of a championship winner. They had the depth, they had the infrastructure there, but there was no top level. There was no championship winning piece. And for Troy with John Summerall, it was that just obscene defense. Whereas Southern Miss, it didn't get to bring any of the Southern or Marshall bones over, but you get the head coach, you get the quarterback, you get a handful of skill positions, but you're notably missing, obviously, Mike Green. Nothing you can do about that. He graduated playing in the NFL now. But you miss a lot of those defensive pieces, that infrastructure around your stars and around your top pieces. So it's funny that those teams are kind of inverse now. And when you take away those layers, this is what we saw out of Troy in their first year out of Gerard Parker after going to, and I think them winning the Sun Belt Championship.
Yep. Not even to kind of add on to your point, you don't have the running game with an AJ Turner who was there last year at Marshall. You don't have the big body receiver of a Christian Fitzpatrick who was the number one at Marshall last year. This was sort of my concern, and it kind of came to fruition in the Louisiana Tech game that they kind of got blown off the map early and then really couldn't claw back. But then as the Sun Belt season has gone on, I'm like, Louisiana Tech might be good, but they're not in the Sun Belt yet, so we don't really have to put a ton of concern in. Now, with Liddy playing, I'm like, I don't know about these guys like around him. Like the inability to run the ball with Pittman and all these this mishmash of guys who are all like fine but not great. The receiving core, it's like basically you got Elijah Metcalf and then whoever else, on a weekly basis. So it's just kind of like, and then you see now when you can't sustain drives and your defense is on the field constantly and they're tired and all this sort of stuff, this thing kind of just snowballs when the quarterback is out. And, hopefully for their sake, Braxton is out there sooner than later, because at minimum, you're going to need him to play in the Troy game, because so Troy has 2 conference losses, right? Yeah, they're 4-2. So Southern Miss, in theory, can drop this one this weekend, and if Braxton is back for the Troy game, they win the West if they beat Troy. So, yeah, I mean, your ceiling wasn't going to be higher than that to begin with. Like 8-4 is fine, but if it's even a question of Braxton being healthy for this Saturday, I would just hold him out and be like, we've got that 1 game cushion. We'll use it. If we win, we win. If not, whatever. And then we'll bring Braxton back, hopefully more healthy for the Troy game, and just hope to kind of close it out. Especially when you saw what you saw at Troy on Thursday, you're like, yeah, we can beat this team with as long as Braxton's healthy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we've seen just some teams have really stumbled into a quarterback. I mean, Arkansas State stumbled into Jalen Rayner. I don't remember. I think Old Dominion kind of stumbled into Colton Joseph. I don't exactly remember.
They did, because they didn't want to. They didn't start him last year.
Coastal, and again, who knows what you get out of him, but you kind of stumble into Samari Collier. But some of these other teams, we saw it last year with Louisiana, where there was, and granted, they were looking at their 3rd guy in Daniel Beal. Now at Southern Miss, looking at Landry Liddy. Some of these top contenders really are unable to. Like, you're telling me Troy can't accidentally find someone? ULM can't find a guy? It's funny just that, like, the different – if you're at the bottom, you've got someone there. You just have to find him. But if you're at the top, I guess there's just no one there for you.
Well, I mean, even to use, you guys' situation, let's say – you guys had Darren Granger for a couple years. He was good, but was he ever? I don't think he was as good as Cameron Brown is right now, to be totally honest. Like,
that's tough. Darren Granger
Cameron Brown, has, to me, seems way more consistent. We talked about in years past, like Granger could drop a dime 60 yards down the field, and then he'd overthrow a screen pass by 10 yards. And you're like,
yeah.
You're like, but you're like the Adam Dunn of quarterbacks, where it's either a home run or a strikeout, like every at bat. Like, what are we doing?
And he was a guy too that Georgia State just kind of fumbled into, because Quad Brown, remember if it was off the field or just poor play, but I mean, he was ready to become the best quarterback in team history that season, and it just didn't pan out. So it's interesting how these quarterback finds happen, and then how you compare that to, maybe higher level where it's like you go in and your guy. We've got our guy.
Even Braylon Braxton last year.
Yeah.
Like Huff didn't want to play him, and then basically the Southern game happened, and then it was like, oh no, like I have to get him on the field. Like they're gonna fire me. Or, he was gone regardless, but he's like, I won't get another head coaching job if I don't get my best quarterback out there. Yeah, again, Texas State just kind of ran it down their throat. Chris Dawn, good job by him. 5 catches, 117 and a score. They just absolutely routed Southern Miss, and Southern Miss had nothing for them. All right, last game of the night. This was my game. This is the O.J. Arnold game. Like, put it in the
Where were you?
I was on my couch watching. I will say my father-in-law and my wife's grandfather were at the game. So they got to see that. And my father-in-law is not even a Southern fan. He's a Georgia Tech alum. But he was like, I'll take my dad, like blah blah blah, get to go see the game. So that was nice. But man, OJ Arnold went crazy in this game. 267 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on the ground. You had, I think it was 53 yards receiving and a touchdown through the air. And then he threw a 73-yard touchdown, and he became the only Georgia Southern player in program history to have all 3 within one game. So
really?
Well, because how many guys are passing, rushing, and throwing a touchdown? Receiving.
I mean, obviously that's crazy, but you would think at some point, especially during those like triple option years where everyone is so hybrid, you'd think at some point someone would have done that, right?
I don't think they were running a lot of trick plays back in the 80s. Like, I don't think there was a lot of halfback passes that they were running. Well, I think it was one of two things. When they did throw the ball, it may have been to the running back, but then they weren't running a trick play. And then when the quarterback was rushing and passing, they weren't running a trick play to throw him the ball in the end zone.
That's fair enough.
That was the big thing. I will say defensively, this cemented, if there was ever any doubt in anybody's mind, this cemented that Brandon Bailey should have just a pink slip on his desk like the last game of the season after they probably lose to Marshall. He should just have a pink slip on his desk that's like, clear your crap out, bud. You're done. Like the fact that so Samari Collier gets hurt on a long run and he's on the sidelines at the end and he can't even like put weight on his leg. So I tweeted it out. It seems like he's probably going to be done for the season with like 2 games to go. He may, I don't know severity of the injury. He may be able to get back for bowl season, but probably not. So Tad Hudson comes in. The fact that you struggled to close out a Tad Hudson team and only beat them by 5, that to me defensively is a fireable offense. You should not be allowing 40 points to a team that primarily had to play Tad Hudson. I'm sorry.
Yeah, someone tweeted at us or replied to one of our tweets and asked, with Samari Collier kind of taking this job and Coastal seems to be going to like a really pass-heavy look, what happens to Tad Hudson? And realistically, the only thing is better learn Montana State, buddy.
Please, Montana State, he might not even start there. That's where college football at the FCS level is like rocking. He's not going to be able to keep up with North Dakota State up there.
No, I hope you learn your, Great Plains geography because that's where you're bound. As you said, this just exacerbates the real inefficiencies of Georgia Southern's offense. What happened though? Because this was a shootout in the first half. This could have been bound for like 60-60, something like that. And then both teams kind of neutered themselves in the second half offensively. Coastal scored 13 to Georgia Southern's 10 after going into half 27-35.
Yeah.
What happened?
Frankly, I think they both got tired from all the running in the first half.
Yeah.
Ryan Applin has had this thing, and I know it worked twice on Saturday. he's had this thing about trick plays. Like, he loves trick plays, and he keeps trying to run them. And like up until this week, they have not worked like at all. And then he had 2 work this week, which means he'll probably just exclusively run trick plays against Old Dominion. Because the one thing that I know about this coaching staff is they do not learn from their mistakes. They keep doing the same things and hope for different results. So honestly, it was just kind of like the Tad Hudson thing like petered out like in the second half. And then it became a race to just run the clock out, where it was like Southern's offense was OJ Arnold, basically. I mean, French played fairly well. He had 264 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it was just like they were trying to run the clock out at all costs. And I think Arnold was kind of out of gas, like after everything he had done. And they kept rotating these other backs in who like haven't played all year. And I'm kind of like, who are these? Like, who is Teo Todd? Who is Bryce Brown? Like, who are these guys? Like, I've not seen. Terrence Gibbs was let out of his sarcophagus for a couple of plays, and then they shoved him back in.
Are we giving up on the Terrence Gibbs thing finally? Like, what's going on, man?
I truly don't know. Like, every year in the offseason, I said this before this season, every year in the offseason, they promise us he's back to 100%, and then he plays like 18 snaps all season, and then it's like, yeah, so I don't know. Like, occasionally he'll just pop up and have a reception for 6 yards, and then it's like, back to the locker room with you, bud. Like, we won't see you for another 3 quarters. So I don't know. Basically what it came down to is like they wanted to run the clock out, but their backups to Arnold aren't good enough to like make it happen. So they were really struggling to kind of get any yardage. And for Coastal, it was like, one of those scores when Hudson was in was a kick return touchdown. So he didn't even touch the ball on that possession. I texted you. I was like, he threw one of the worst picks I've ever seen in my life. Like he hit a defender between the numbers. Like, I think they were on the 30 or something. And they were like driving to go down and score to like pull within, I can't remember what the score was at that point. He hit a defender literally between the numbers, like in the hands, like it was a textbook, like, what you would want a receiver to get as a target. But I don't know. It was just like kind of both teams, I think, ran out of gas. Like by the end, it was just like neither one of them have the depth to like keep this momentum going. And, Coastal's not going to score a ton with Tad Hudson in the game.
No, they're a lost ship without Samari Collier. And even then, they were starting to figure it out, realize that the guy just really can't pass the ball well, and just let him run out of the gun and call it a day. You've got to go back to Tad Hudson. It's just a really dark spot that I don't wish upon anyone. That's really unfortunate.
No, I couldn't agree more. After I saw him play last year a full game against Southern, and he was really bad. Or no, sorry, that was the other guy who's at Liberty now. We watched Hudson play the bowl game. He was really bad in that, and then to start this season, he was really bad until they got Collier in there finally. Yeah, Collier had a 47-yard run. So like, to me, maybe OJ Arnold still does what he did in this game, but if Collier plays, I kind of think Coastal scores late, and it's 47-45 Coastal, because they still weren't having like a ton of problems. But it's like, yeah, look at Hudson, 15 of 28, 173 and a pick. Like, they weren't really doing a whole lot when he was out there. It was kind of like, yeah, we need, Collier to come out, and Bryson Graves hits one pass, which was also a trick play. They were running trick plays. We were running trick plays. They were getting kick return touchdowns. We would do something silly. Camden Brown was 5 catches, 133 and 3 touchdowns. So good on him for that. He caught the OJ Arnold touchdown, and Weston Bryan actually came out and threw a touchdown as well. So it was just, both teams were just kind of emptying the bag, like trying to find anything to kind of claw and get this win. But defensively, yeah, it's still really bad.
I'm glad that they're having fun because the alternative is your App State and you're sticking with AJ Swan. This is actually the best case scenario for both teams. Obviously, Coastal without Samari Collier, this is your best case scenario. And then for Southern, it's just, hey man, go have fun because the defense ain't going to do a lick. So at least make it entertaining best you can.
The defense isn't going to do anything for you that's positive, really. You've already eliminated yourself from the conference title race. You've got no hope there. Your best shot is just to make a bowl, like squeak into a bowl game at like 6-6, 7-5. Because frankly, like, do I think that